Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Hopefully you can. Welcome to the fourth webinar. The fourth for the platform that I created. The leaders who put the human in humanity are the ones that we want to talk to. There's so much going on in our world today. And finding like-minded people who care is so incredibly important, because when we come together, 1 + 1 equals 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000. And you're in for a treat tonight. Oh my gosh, my two new sisters are going to share some very important information that we know is going to be helpful for you. I'm so excited to talk about this platform, to use this platform in a way that addresses the things that are going on that we need to address and prioritize. Who knew that so much would be in the news as we were planning this around social media and teen girls' mental health? Who knew? But it is important for us to talk about it. And I'm so glad that we were prepared and ready to have this conversation that we're having tonight. So joining me, I will introduce our guests and our hostess with the mostest, as I like to say. First, I'd like to introduce Larissa May, and we'll call her Lars. I'm going to let her share just a bit about who she is and what she does. Lars?
Thank you so much for having me here. I don't know about you all, but this is the best energy that I've ever had at a virtual event. So we have the DJ to thank for that, and your beautiful spirit, of course. But my name is Larissa May, also known as Lars. And I stand here today because I'm a survivor. I am one of many young people who have struggled with mental health and social media. And about 9 years ago, I almost ended my own life because of my struggles with depression in the digital world. And I realized that technology played such a strong role in my lack of ability to actually manage my emotions and have resilience in the digital age. And so I decided to help solve this problem by creating the first youth-centric nonprofit out of my college dorm room with $250, which has now become really one of the leading global organizations educating youth through intervention-based programming, conducting digital flourishing research, and creating policy both on a state and national level. So I'm so grateful to be here. And of course, young women are especially vulnerable to the challenges that social media presents emotionally. And I look forward to sharing the stage with such incredible experts that I know I'll be learning from too.
Oh, wow. We love you, and we're so grateful for you and the work that you are committed to doing. Stephanie, I am so excited to introduce my next guest, Stephanie Limmerman, and she is the VP of Community Partnerships at BARC Technologies.
Good evening. I feel so honored to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us. I'm excited to be a part of this conversation and dialogue. I'll share more in some of our questions about BARC specifically, but in my role with the community partnerships, I oversee our organization's community-based partners. So this will range from schools, parent groups, child advocacy groups, nonprofits, and we support these groups with their efforts in educating parents and communities about online safety. Together, we've really worked towards a shared mission of protecting children and ultimately contributing to the creation of safer and more peaceful communities. My background, I spent over a decade in the education technology sector, working with K-12 schools across the country in helping students with their academic achievement, as well as safety and mental health. And then personally, I have a daughter, and I'm very committed to all different variations of service and support work to help young girls, and very passionate about this conversation and excited to be here. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do and your commitment to serve girls. We're so honored. We love you and we thank you for being here. And now I will introduce my sister, Katie Kempner, the hostess with the mostest down there in sunny Florida. Thank you, Katie, for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you because you do an amazing job of asking amazing questions as you lead this discussion for us this evening.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much, Lars and Stephanie, because this is such an important topic. I'm Katie Kempner, and I am the founder of Kempner Communications, which is a PR firm. And I also am the host of Perspectives with Katie Kempner, which you can find on Apple and Spotify and AW360. So let's jump right in. We have a lot to talk about. Sonia, let's just start with you. So the Surgeon General released a report last May that stated that 95% of teenagers and 40% of children ages 8 to 12 are on social media. Social media, we can agree, has a lot of positive impacts, especially with kids connecting, finding like-minded other kids and people and teens. But at the same time, as you mentioned, it's been all over the news. What's really come to light even more so in the past few weeks, and maybe is best illustrated when Mark Zuckerberg got up, recently at a Senate hearing on the harm of social media and turned to the parents and actually apologized to them. How terribly many young people are affected by social media. Can we start off by just talking about what you see as some of the biggest dangers of social media and young girls, and what is going on?
Yes, well, for those of you who are new to our work, who may be joining us, I'm so grateful that we have new people here who are new to understanding the work and the mission of the Sister Accord. I tapped into, and I was sharing earlier with our guests, I tapped into a humanity insight during my corporate years in understanding that girls and women around the world, we are always pitted against each other. We are always having to compete. There's this feeling that I've got to compete. I have to one-ups the person and all of this negativity. And I wanted to understand, where does this come from? Like, how is it that the person that's in the rural village of Africa and the person in Brooklyn, the girls are having and facing the same kind of socialization issues? And so as I studied it, it became clear to me that a lot of it deals with the patriarchy, right? That the systems cause us to believe that we have to compete. The scarcity mindset. I've got to compete for the boy. I've got to compete to say that I'm cuter and thinner and all this other foolishness that really at the end of the day doesn't matter. But it gets exacerbated because we're not addressing it. And so I liken it to the physics theorem. An object that's in motion stays in motion until something disrupts it. The Sister Accord is the disruptor to be able to say to girls, no, no, no. We are not going to have this whole notion of, we're better than you, we're cuter than you, so we have to look down on you, and all of the body positivity, issues, and, it's all connected. And social media exacerbates it. And because the negativity is what people are drawn to, there's a lot of good on social media, right? I mean, I have some amazing things and things that I learned, but we're drawn to the negativity. And what we found in our research and study is that's what gets served. So the algorithm is serving more and more negativity and more things that were making our girls feel less than. Listen, comparison is the enemy of joy. The moment you start comparing yourself to someone else, you're going to instantly have those feelings of inadequacy. Oh, I'm not cute enough. I'm not thin enough. Oh, I need to do this. I need to do that. And we see it today. What's this whole thing with Taylor Swift and Beyonce, right? Always pitted against each other. And the only way that we are going to address this and stop it, stop the dysfunction and stop normalizing the dysfunction is if we, as girls and women, stand up and say enough. We're not participating in that. We're not doing that. I am going to support my sisters. I am going to establish healthy relationships with my sisters. And again, we are naturally going to connect with some people more organically than others. Okay, that's a given. What I'm saying is you can at least respect other people. You don't have to go on vacation with them. You can respect them. And so it's a mindset shift that we focus on in all of our programming with the Sister Accord that says that we can see ourselves with our greatness, tapping into our greatness, and then we can also see that in each other. And that's what has to happen, Katie. If I just think about why this mission and why this work is so important, we have got to get girls and women to stop participating in all of this negativity. And we can do that.
Could not agree more. And Lars, I know you're focused on that too with your organization, Half the Story. Can you tell us a little bit more of what you started in the intro, your mission, your organization, and how you're leading the digital well-being movement for the next generation, which is such a great way of saying it.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much for setting up this conversation. And the hearings that happened last week are really critical. And I also just want to add that it's part of the financial system for big tech to put girls and young girls against each other. Last year, big tech made $11 billion off of advertising dollars with minors. And it is no coincidence that they're serving up these beauty ads and these girls that perhaps we'll never look like, but almost kill ourselves trying to look like, which was my story and being on the other side of the screen. I think what we also know from research is that girls have mixed experiences online as it relates to body image, and that roughly 1 in 3 girls that are online experience mental health issues as a result of the platform or feel that their issues are connected to what they've seen. And our work at Half the Story is, while also acknowledging a lot of the negatives around technology, is about empowering young people and giving them the skills so that they can thrive in the digital age and so that they can take their power back. Because so many times we tell girls that they are the victims, they are the quiet ones, they shouldn't talk and they should listen and they should just take the information and put on their armor and go up and show up in the world acting like nothing is wrong. But what we do is we give them a space to learn, a space to break down, and also a space to break through. And all 3 of those things are equally as important in order to actually build emotional resilience online. And what we actually measure for is digital flourishing. So what that means is ensuring that when young people come through our programming, that they walk out of it making sure that their character development, their body image, the way that they feel about themselves and their relationships to others improves.
That's fantastic. Stephanie, can you talk a little bit about what Bark Technologies does and how they're also helping to monitor and make social media safer?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm so, like I said, I'm so honored to be in this conversation. It's so critical. And it's interesting that we're coming from the different perspectives with this, because as a side note for myself, as a young girl and teenager and then into adulthood, I also struggled. And this was pre-social media. So struggling with insecurities and comparison, which ultimately led to depression, anxiety, eating disorders, substance abuse issues. So I've lived it, and I'm so grateful to Lars and the work you're doing so young, the impact you're having on young girls. It's so needed. And my own experience is that didn't really exist. And so the fact that like this is starting to build and cultivate much more is remarkable. The work that we're doing, we realize there's a mental health crisis, and it's fueled so much by social media, by screen time. The data, the science continues to reinforce that our kids, teens, tweens, children younger and younger are getting access to devices and to smartphones. And for us, a lot of the work that we do is supporting parents and guardians in keeping their children safe while they're on connected devices. And as a parent, it's extremely overwhelming and frankly daunting to think that you can kind of handle all of this on your own, to be able to manage this and what their children are getting access to. So at Bark, our priority is to help parents and guardians keep their children safer while they're connected, on connected devices and applications. And we do that in a few different ways. We have an award-winning parental monitoring technology that is currently trusted to protect over 6.8 million children. It's proactively scanning and alerting parents to potential dangers across social media, text, email, as well as photos and videos. Our tech is remarkable. It's industry leading. It's far beyond just a keyword alert. We're actually able to understand all the variations and nuances of the ways that kids communicate and alert parents to things like cyberbullying, to depression and anxiety, to violence and predation and suicidal ideation. And the beauty is that we have a technology that still preserves the privacy of the child, so the parent is not alerted to everything. So our technology, it's available as an app and a phone. We're incredibly proud to offer parents the safest phone available that gives them that proactive ability out of the box. And the other piece or element of the work that we do is about spreading awareness, educating, and building community around parenting in a digital age. So we've actually built an amazing Facebook community of over 450,000 parents. It's called Parenting in the Tech World. You can ask questions, share advice, and talk about just the latest of online dangers and social media trends. And then my team specifically is more focused on hyper-local events and, really building community. We do that through work with schools and PTAs to help educate their community about online safety. And we offer those like parenting speaking events at no cost because we're very much on a mission to come together and to support each other in this entire endeavor that we're faced with. So
it's amazing to have those tools. The funny thing is my kids are in their 20s now, but I used to tell them that I had a thing on there that monitored their computers and their phones, and it didn't exist. So, now it exists, but they thought we had Bark Technologies years ago, so it's wonderful.
That works. Yeah. I love that.
So both Lars and Stephanie, Sonia, touched upon something that is a huge problem for girls, teen girls, really and truly women too. I mean, I would be lying if I said I didn't, scroll through Instagram and not see a million things that tells me how I can get rid of my cellulite, but really and truly what, and I don't think that exists, but really and truly, how do you think we can combat this for women? Because you especially, you are so wonderful about body positivity. How do you think we can combat this?
We have to talk about it. Until we really get serious about what is going on and acknowledging that it's going on and understanding the root cause of it, there's no way that we can ever truly address it. And I remember growing up, I wore a size 0. And people would always have something to say about how thin I was, to the point where it just would make me, I would be incensed. And so guess what I started to do? I started to wear clothes that were big so that no one could really see my body. And that just kept, I would say the mindset around my body then kept growing and going into these other stages of, okay, well, what should I do now with this? Or how should I cover this? And I remember as I was starting my business and needing to have some branding pictures taken. And do you know those things that I was dealing with as a young girl were coming and flowing back into, as a grown adult woman, I was still trying to find ways to hide, right? Because that's the impact of it when people think that they have the right to talk about your body. I don't care if you're thin, mid-size, or whatever size you are. People need to understand what is appropriate in terms of how we talk to each other about our bodies. And that just told me, as I was an adult woman still dealing with some of these issues, it just told me that we're not talking about this enough. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we were including that as part of what we do for the Sister Accord programming, so that we can address these things when girls are younger, so that they don't have to carry the burden of all of that as they get older. But my thing is, we've got to talk about it. We've got to highlight it. And again, address the dysfunction. We have to say that is not appropriate, and make sure that people understand that early in life versus waiting until we're 40 or 50 years old to address it.
That's an excellent point. Lars, you talked about how in your own life you spent a lot of time struggling with depression and anxiety, a lot of it brought on by social media. Some teens and girls, and really this goes for everybody, not all kids, but we're sort of focusing. I think it's good advice for everyone. It will be more obvious. They'll either talk about it, or they'll be very vocal, or they'll change the way they look, but others won't. So what are some of the signs to look for, especially with those kids that aren't as obvious?
Yeah. So if you're a parent, I think one of the best things to have an idea of where your kid is at is by looking at what's on their feed page and what's on their algorithm. When I was struggling with my mental health, a lot of the content on my page was eating disorder content, also fashion content. And then I was also looking at like other like hashtag depression, which is bad, but it's something that people do sometimes when you're depressed. Like you Google that. I've done that, to be frank. And that's usually, if I start Googling depression, I know I'm in trouble. But that's really it. I mean, the algorithm is showing what it thinks your child is interested in, and is basically taking cookies from everywhere on the internet. So that's a really great picture of where your kid's head's at. And it's also a good picture of where yours is too. So look at your own feed. But the second thing I would say is a lot of kids are spending time on their device because they're using as a way to numb out and not deal with their emotions because they don't have the skills. And I think where a lot of parents go wrong is that when you're punishing kids all the time without really listening to them and understanding why they're on their device, you sometimes overlook mental health issues that might be happening. And another sign is if you take your phone away from your kids, or you try to create habits and your kid literally exhibits anger or frustration or even physical tics, that's usually a sign it's getting out of control. In addition to sneaking around, so like getting up late at night, sneaking into the kitchen, or not sleeping at all. And you can usually tell if your child is not sleeping because of what they look like, but also irritability. I would definitely look out for irritability in kids because it tells you that something isn't right. physically or mentally. And sometimes the symptoms mentally show up the same way that they do physically, and we tend to not acknowledge that. So those are just some of the couple of tips that I would say are things that you can really look out for.
That's great. That is really great. And now, Stephanie, I'd like to ask you, so as a parent or caregiver, you see some of these things, and sometimes it's not so easy to figure out how to broach the subject, especially with kids that are irritable or quick to snap. What do you do? What advice would you have for parents and caregivers if they really do think something's wrong, but they don't know quite how to talk about it?
Absolutely. Echoing the whole piece about listening, like being an active listener, being direct yet empathetic is always a good choice in all of our relationships, but especially if you're a caregiver supporting a child or teen or tween that's dealing with these types of potential issues. I think sometimes parents worry about like asking if they ask hard questions like, are you depressed? Are you anxious? Are you thinking of harming yourself? That they're planting a seed, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. I think the whole continued theme of this conversation is having uncomfortable conversations, like, and leaning into the uncomfortable. Like, chances are similar to what Lars was saying. Like, if you suspect your child is suffering and you're seeing like a drastic change in behavior, then they are likely indeed struggling or suffering with something and want to talk about it. And so don't be afraid to ask questions, especially ones that will open up a dialogue, and then sit with them with that. Like, one of the lines that we often recommend is, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. And then stop talking. Like, allow them to talk so that active listening opens up. Kids, I think especially teens are desperate in a lot of ways to be heard. And so I'd say just to keep leaning into that fear and that uncomfortable, because so much of parenting, that's what parenting is filled with. And so I would say that's a big piece of it. And also the leaning on resources, like you're not alone. You don't have to try to figure this out on your own. So talking to people in your life about it, other parents, joining communities, therapy. There's so many amazing resources out there to provide ways to broach these conversations. But I'd say just keeping it open-ended and not ignoring it, not putting your head in the sand, not being like timid or scared. Or I think the other approach can sometimes be negative is more of the like, well, what's wrong with you? Something must be wrong with you. Like, we have to fix you, because I think what that ends up doing is it creates this like brokenness mentality of the child. And that just exacerbates the entire situation. So keep the conversations open and listen.
That's great. And because especially if a child is feeling broken already, that's doing the like exact opposite of what you're trying to do. So
yeah, and I get it's hard. It's so hard. My daughter is younger, so we're learning, and it'll continue to provide additional situations, but they want to be heard, and so that's a huge piece of it.
They want to be heard. Sonia, you're nodding your head vigorously, and Stephanie mentioned resources. The Sister Accord is a wonderful resource, and one that does a lot around well-being, both physical and mental. So can we talk about some tactical things now that the Sister Accord does to promote and sustain mental health on social media, and with things that people might be able to take away for their own lives?
Well, one of the things that is so important, and I say this to all mentees, everyone who comes to our events, whether we're online or in person, as it relates to social media, limit your time. Because the longer you sit there and scroll, you're going to start creeping. It's just human nature to start that little comparison piece starts to just creep in. Ooh, wow. Oh my goodness. And I remember during one of my coaching sessions, I'm talking to this very successful leader. And she says that she was feeling down because she was feeling like she hadn't achieved some of the things that her classmates had achieved because she was looking at Facebook. And I said, wait a minute, let's pause this thing for a moment. People are only showing you what they want to show you, and they're only showing the positive side. You don't even know if it's true. And so you're comparing yourself and your life to something. In some instances, it could be a false reality. And so you have to limit your time. For me, I say 7 minutes. I go on, I want to speak life into people. I want to give some people some love. And so I'm very intentional about what I'm going to do when I join. I'm going to share our events, what we're doing, the successes, the challenges. You know, when I just lost my aunt, I wanted to share that. When I lost my mom. And so I am very intentional about how I spend my time on social media. The other piece is you have to be really careful who you are connected to. You have to be very, very careful. What are they putting into the universe? If it's negativity and all of this vile and nasty and mean, content, you need to shut it down, disconnect. Because whether you believe it or not, and my sons, I know they're listening, and I tell them all the time, guys, you have to protect what you see and you have to protect what you hear, because that stuff goes into your spirit and soul. And so we have to be very, very cognizant of who we're following and who we're connected to determine if it is protecting your peace or disturbing your peace. I'd say the other thing that for me that I ask people as I'm working with folks is determine why you use social media. So for me, I said I like to inspire, I like to give love and stay connected and share information. What is your purpose? How do you use social media? And how can you use it for good? Because like I said, there's a lot of good out there. How can we make sure that we are protecting our children, that we're protecting ourselves, and making sure that we promote positivity on these different platforms versus the negative? Now, again, I understand, I overstand that the algorithm and what the system is trying to do is promote the negativity. But I think if enough of us can really get behind how we are going to use it and start shutting down and not engaging in some of that negativity, I think we can make a difference.
That's a great point. And also, for a lot of kids, social media is a place for connection and for talking with each other. And Lars, I'd like to talk about that a little bit, because let's talk about the actual platforms, Instagram, TikTok. A lot of parents and caregivers, they don't really understand the social media. Forget about what the message is. They don't even understand the social media their kids are really using. They know they're on their phones. They know they're on their computer, way more their phone. Do you believe that it's important for parents and caregivers to spend time on the platforms themselves or to understand a little bit more about them?
Absolutely. I think, like anything, you have to be a curious consumer when you're trying something new. And unfortunately, for adults, every day picking up technology is new because the trends are changing, the features are changing. And I think one of the biggest things, we were at a anti-bullying conference, and one of the platform leads came on and actually shared a stat that was super interesting and said only 9% of the parents on our platforms actually use the safety features. And I think why that's so important is because what that means is that, yeah, on one hand, maybe they're not that great at educating people about this, but on the flip side, there's a huge opportunity for parents to get empowered and to actually get on these platforms and see what they can do to build a safer environment, in addition to using tools like Bark, of course, which is one that we've recommended a lot to our school communities. But secondly, I think you also have to figure out how to get in the game of tech as a parent, and how to make your kid be the pro surfer of their digital world as opposed to the victim, and actually get in and play games around that. So an example of that is, if you have a kid and you're giving them a YouTube and they're 8 years old and you're having them watch videos, don't let that kid sit on YouTube and do whatever they want. Get in there and search and build their algorithm with classical music that's really boring so that after they watch the video that they want to watch, that they're getting served up content that's not interesting to them. Like, take control in those ways and be empowered as opposed to feeling like a victim, because if we all have that mindset, we're never going to win and we're never going to be able to take a step forward.
That's an amazing point. Stephanie, I want to ask you, so those are the platforms. Let's talk a little bit about, the tools themselves, which in most cases now for kids are smartphones. So many parents are torn. And when my kids were little, before there was Bark, but I pretended there was, I was a divorced mom and my kids weren't always with me. And I let them have phones quite young because I wanted to be able to communicate with them. And a lot of parents are torn. They want their kids to be, in touch and be safe. And then on the other hand, they're worrying about the dangers of social media. So in your work with parent groups, is there a right time to allow your kids to have a smartphone and engage in social media? I guess that's like a double question. Like, if they have a phone, do they, then they have access to some form of social media, right?
Right. Yeah. I really think this is something that we hear this in every community. It's one of the most common questions that we get. And every parent struggles with this, every caregiver, because it's not an easy choice. And every child and every family situation and dynamic is different. So there's not a straight answer. Our stance has always been that delay is the way. So, and if you can't delay, for whatever reason, then make sure that you have guardrails in place, like Bark, whether it's the Bark phone, the Bark app, you're using some level of monitoring, but make sure that you aren't providing them unfiltered and unfettered access to the internet. And unfortunately, kids are being exposed to so much. And as we know, a lot of it is scary, and there's scary people out there that want access to our kids. And so one of the most unsafe things you can do is to give your child a smartphone with access to 4 billion strangers and all of the things. And so it is hard, but delaying is typically what we lean into. And then just kind of tying back to what we were talking about before, which is to have those open, honest and candid conversations. There are phones, and Bark actually has a planned version of this where the phone can be stripped down to be much more simpler. So it doesn't have access to all the apps and web browsing and things like that, but it does allow you as a parent to be able to still stay connected with your child. So you could do texting and phone calls and things like that. So you're keeping it much more simple. And then as the child ages and you feel as a parent that they have the maturity and emotional capacity to handle some of the things they're going to be exposed to and engaged in online, then you can start to provide them more access. But that's, going to be dependent on every single family. What we do know to be true is that the data says that young brains cannot handle this medium. Adults can barely do it. We are putting our own parameters and trying to keep ourselves off of it. And so I would just make sure you lean into the why. Why are you providing them a phone? What is it solving? And to trust your gut instinct about your own child, and make sure that they're prepared and you're prepared to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Lars, I've heard about some parents that try to make a pact together so none of their kids have phones. I mean, is this realistic?
It really depends on what your community looks like. And not all communities created equal, not all parents are created equal, not all caregivers are created equal. And I think, just to be frank, that's a lot easier to do in environments where you have a higher socioeconomic status and backgrounds. Most of the communities that we work with are under-resourced, and it becomes very challenging because some of those parents have 3 jobs and they need the iPad to be the babysitter. And so it is much more complicated. And I actually really wish that the media talked more about those nuances. A big focus for us is digital well-being as a part of digital equity. So it's tough, but I will say that, you know, instead of necessarily saying we're banding together and not getting our kids phones, like really think about the full picture, because there are parents that do that and then their kids go into school and the school forces them to be on an iPad. So instead say, hey, I'm going to find parents that are aligned and say, we're not going to allow phones during play dates. And maybe that's the first step before going super extreme.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the other thing is that even if you do institute this, you know, rule, or even if you had a group of parents, and you make such an excellent point that I don't even think I really thought of when I was thinking of that question, that, you know, often that isn't even possible. But let's say you do that, and, you know, your kid doesn't have a phone. They probably, unless they're part of this pack, have friends that do. So, Sonia, so much of it is about community, not necessarily community of nobody has a phone, but community like the sister accord of explaining what you do when you do have a phone. Are there best practices, you know, you share with parents to share with their kids?
Yes, you know, what we talk about, again, that's really important is we focus on the mindset. So you will hear me oftentimes talk about the fact that with the sister accord, we do the heart work, and the heart work is the hard work. And what I mean by that is to examine our own behaviors and our relationships. Since we know that bullying starts as early as the age of 4, and I'm like still trying to figure out how can you be a baby and be a bully, right? We have to ask ourselves, what are we talking about? What are we role modeling? What is our behavior? What is our language? You know, are they hearing you gossip? Are they hearing you and seeing you backstab? You know, what are the things that we can do to change the narrative on how we interact with each other? And the only way that I see for us to address these things is to do this heart work. And so providing situations and environments, or even, you know, just sharing stories of how we have evolved in our relationships. You know, perhaps when you were younger, you may have struggled with friendships with other girls or what have you, but you worked at it and you started to see the positive in yourself that then gave you the ability to see it in others. This is hard work. This is something that has to be done every single day. Like literally, we have to get up and say, I want better relationships. I want to make sure that I am getting along well, that I am living my life with joy and peace and love, and, you know, all the things that we talk about with the Sister Accord. But you have to desire it and you have to work at it every single day. And so what gets me so excited is when girls and women come back and say, gosh, I can't believe the trajectory of my life, the successes that I'm having, what I'm experiencing. I can't believe that since leaving one of your events, that I have literally transformed how I interact with other people. So we give these tools, we provide an environment where people can learn and unlearn some things, right? Because some people will say to me, hey, my grandmother was mean. My grandmother was the mean girl, or my grandmother was messy, or my great-grandmother was. So all the women in my family treat each other very poorly. This is what people will say, right, when they come. And they're like, I've never seen women loving on each other like you all do. I've not seen it. I thought that this was not possible. And so what we are doing is role modeling and making sure that we talk through these tools and as part of this leadership development program. And it's so amazing how many people actually desire it. People want to do better. They want peace. They're tired of all this other stuff. I call it the noise. And so being able to provide these kinds of strategies and tools has really been the key to our success, over the past 10 years.
I can't help but think, but this is a whole other other webinar. But talking about role modeling, when you look at all the women today who don't need to be on Ozempic and weight loss drugs and are, I mean, and then we go back to talking about like the beginning of this conversation of all these young girls and teen girls that feel terrible about their bodies and feel fat. And then you're seeing everybody lose so much weight. This is another conversation because I have a few more things I want to ask. But I mean, talk about role modeling. That's really something to think about. What we as grown-ups are putting out there as the norm, the current norm. I wanted to just let everybody who's listening know that if you have any questions, I have more, but I'd love to share some of your questions with our guests. Please put them in the chat, just in the regular chat, and I will ask them. And in the meantime, Lars, I wanted to ask you, if people want to get involved with your organization, how do they do it?
I'll drop our website in the chat. You can sign up to be a teen advisor at Half the Story if that's what you want your kids to do. You can also bring our programming to your school. And we actually also have, so our teens run our Instagram account and are constantly posting about the biggest trends that young people are facing on the internet. So they actually just posted a reflection on the hearings last week. So I'll drop that in too.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow.
And Steph, what can I ask? What was their reflection?
So we actually had a team meeting about it. One of them, so I'll say in one word, they said Mark Zuckerberg is a human bot. But truthfully, I think, their takeaway is that social media, they just feel like it's a really dangerous place. They feel like it doesn't have to be. And I think their biggest concern is that leaving it in the hands of big tech is not the most promising approach. And so a lot of our work is education and empowering youth to take charge in their own communities. So I guess part of that fuel is within their own fire, and they want to be able to create their own policies on a school level and to create student boards that are a part of disciplinary action when it comes to social media on their own campuses, because a lot of the biggest issues start at home, even though we're sitting around and waiting for big tech to make decisions for us.
Mm-hmm.
And
wow.
that's true. That's true in so many ways. I mean, that's such an amazing point. Stephanie, let's talk about Bark. If people want your products or they want to, be a part of your micro communities or your larger communities, how can they do that?
Absolutely. I'll do the same in dropping a couple links in here so that you can explore both our community partnership initiative, as well as joining our Parenting in a Tech World group, which, like I said before, that has grown from homegrown or internally grown and now is up to like 450,000 parents in there. A great place if you have additional questions, like we talked about, for ongoing support, reinforcing that like you don't have to do this alone. Here you can connect with many other parents and guardians that are trying to figure this out as well. So I just plugged that in there.
Okay, I'm a fan of like sort of the lightning round. So I'm just going to ask everyone the same question. And Stephanie, I'll start with you. If there's one thing that you're really hoping, or even two, but that people take away from this today, from this conversation, what is it?
Oh, it's hard to pick one thing.
Feel free to do more. No.
Well, prior to like the beginning of this conversation versus where we are now, if I was thinking of one thing, so I would say engaging in conversations more often and just having authentic connection. We kind of talked about as a parent, practicing what you preach, like being that role model is such a big deal. Kids, they're going to be looking to us as the parents. And so role modeling our behavior as well. How do we interact with our phones? If we're telling them and we're monitoring their screen time, what's our screen time look like? This is something I try to employ in my own life as well, is like being mindful of how you're interacting with technology. And then leaning into things outside of tech, like that reinforce that connection, like mentoring and volunteer work and, the importance of childhood. So even if like it's a teen, mentoring, getting into a program where maybe they can support and mentor a younger kid, and remember that importance of childhood outside of screens. Go out into nature, like do some things with your family, like talk and laugh, and just the importance of that connection piece, I would say, is one of the big things, because social media is almost like just trying to like claw at all of us. And so let's try to disengage a bit. And then the other piece I'd say, because I didn't just have one, unfortunately.
Please
So
share.
I would say like the whole idea of like not putting your head in the sand and like don't believe that you're going to be immune to these issues. Like it's not a matter of if, it's more a matter of when. So really start to pay attention to what your kids are doing online, and with whom, and start to have those real open and honest conversations. Let them know that you're a safe space and they're not going to get, it's not punitive. They're not going to get in trouble, and that you're empowered to do that together. And that resources are here. Bark is here to help. And we're happy to be a part of that solution.
Everything you're doing is phenomenal. And that was great advice too. So thank you so much.
Katie,
Lars?
there's a question before we jump to Lars. I think it's a great question. I want to get it in because our time is running short.
Okay.
You want to ask that question?
Sure. And I saw Lars actually had a great answer. So the question was, what is the best way for a parent to support their child if the parent themselves has not addressed their own issues of comparison and body shaming? And Lars, do you want to share what you wrote back to her?
Yeah, I think that kids want parents to be vulnerable. We aren't superheroes, we're adults. And when you see your parent be vulnerable, it makes you feel like you can be vulnerable too. And we not only have to model good screen habits, we have to model good emotional health. So it's okay to not be perfect. We're all on a journey, and you might find that your kids are struggling too, and you can actually support each other through that.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Lars, do you want to also add to that, please, just one or two things that you'd like people to take away? You've had such great advice for us tonight.
Yeah. One thing I'd say to take away from today is that not all screen time is created equal. If you apply mindfulness to the digital age, you can leave the digital world better than you found it. And it's really important to take those small steps every day to make a difference. The second thing I'd say is reduce your social expectations online. My favorite thing to do that I've done every day is, or most days, is manipulate my do not disturb feature. So it sends an away message to everyone that texts me. And it could go from, hey, I'm with my friends, I'm not going to respond to tomorrow. Or, hey, dreams don't mix well with digital distraction. So you might not hear from me on text. Call me.
Very nice. I like that one. Call me. People don't call enough. And then I just want to say thank you so much, both of you. It was wonderful. Sonia, thank you. It's an honor to get to lead these conversations. I'd love to turn it back over to you for you to take us out and also answer the question, what would you like people to take away from tonight?
I would love for people to, and I just love the comments here. I'm seeing them. Thank you, Mary Graham, all the way from Chicago. We've had just some wonderful comments there. And Leah is in Detroit. Oh, wow. We have some awesome sisters who are a part of the Sister Accord with us tonight, and they can attest to the fact that when we lead with love and lead with kindness and are intentional about making sure that we take care of each other, amazing things can happen. And that's what we do within this organization. It's always coming from a place of, what can I do to serve you? How can we ensure that there's reciprocity in our relationships? No, we're not doing one-sided, lopsided relationships where only one person is winning. No. And how do we model these things and talk about these things with our young people so that they have a long runway of being able to operate this way? Because I'm telling you, when we go where the love is and we stop trying to convince people of our worth and value, and you surround yourself with people who really see you, all the places you will go. And it's so important for us to leverage technology and use it for good when we can, but recognize when there are dangers, when something is harming our children, that we are willing to fight to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to protect them. And so I want everyone to recognize that we believe that it is all of our responsibilities to help and support our children. It's not just the parent or caregiver. We have to come back to the village. What is the village going to do and say so that we can protect our children? And that's what the Sister Accord community is. We're the village for our children and for each other. And oh, by the way, men, you are not excluded, because if we're going to strengthen families and communities, we must make sure that we are also including the men in this conversation, particularly as it pertains to eradicating bullying and violence against girls and women, where most of, and the statistics say, 95+% of domestic violence incidences are started by men, by boys and men. So if we're going to eradicate that, there's some work that we have to do for our boys as well. And so that's what I want people to take away from this evening. We're not perfect. We're all trying to figure it out. But when we come together on one accord, amazing things can happen. Love you all so much. I appreciate you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Please let us know if there's anything that we can do to serve you all. For our girls, please know that we are here for you. If there's anything that you need, if you need to talk with someone, please make sure that you reach out and you know that you are not alone, because the head fake is designed to make you feel like you're alone. You are not alone. We love you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you, Lars. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, DJ Will in the building. Love you all. Thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening and sweet dreams.
Thank you.
Bye.
Let's dance it out. All right, go Lars, go Lars. Get busy, get busy. Woo! Go Stephanie, go Stephanie.